To make it really simple, I try and say to people, have you heard of the gender pay gap? From there, I explain to people that we help companies pay people fairly. Equidi is basically pay equity software. So we help companies understand their pay gaps across every part of their business and look at it in different segments. So whether it's any intersectional data points or anywhere across their business, we'll identify areas of pay inequity and then step them towards closing those gaps. It's a bit of an interesting journey. I had my whole career in HR and my dream was to be a chief people officer. And so when I got there, it wasn't quite as I had thought it would be. But one of the big things for me was it took quite a while to reach pay equity within that role. So for the first couple of years, I was paid around 50% less than the benchmark for the role, around 50 to 60% less than the male peer group in that role. And it took around 2 years to get that fixed. I eventually went to our global CEO and presented him with the pay data, and he was horrified when he saw it and fixed it straight away. But it said to me, one thing was for sure, was that it's not that easy for executives to see that type of data in real time. And then it made me really see that there was a need for a product like equity. And so from there, off we went, and the rest is kind of history. We built the product in under a year, put it out to market, and we're now moving into the third year of equity. I think for me it was being kind of the minority, and I think that can be common. It depends on what industry you're working in, I guess. But you know, being kind of in that lonely position, and particularly in HR, I think HR is a role that is hard to really explain to people who aren't in the inner circle of HR what is actually going on and how you're feeling about things, because you're treading that really fine line of what you know about everything and then what the business knows. So, and that can occur to anyone. You don't need to be a woman in leadership for that to happen, but I just found that it was a bit of a lonely journey in some cases. Yeah, I would actually say it was taking the plunge to do equity, because I had always been in-house in HR. And at the time, you know, you think you have work stress and you think that, and then you start your own business and then you really realise what work stress is. So I think that was career defining, because I think back to even when I was in HR, I'd be nervous about doing company stand-ups and talking to all staff and things like that. And what I realised when I started equity was that I need to now do this every single day to everyone who will hear me. The one thing I would say is just to be you with it, because particularly when I stepped up the first time leading people in HR, I was again petrified, and I had massive oh, you're not good enough to do it. How can you do this? You don't know everything about HR. And then I realised after time you didn't really need to do that. But also when you come from a place of fear, then you create that energy around you as well. And that's not a great environment. So I think you need to just be yourself and trust yourself and back yourself in it. I think they're the biggest things. It's not about textbook leadership. That kind of doesn't work. It's just about being you and I guess being in tune with and caring for the people you work with, because once you step into leadership, it's not all about you and your career. It's about how you develop the team around you. When you talk about the concept of imposter syndrome, I don't think it's a thing that just affects women. I think it affects everyone. I've spoken to men and women, and so many people feel it. When I look at it, for me, early doors, like I said, how daunting it was stepping into leadership. I thought I had to be this perfect, you know, thing, like you read all these leadership books and what they do and that, and I'm like, oh, I must have to be like that. The sooner you realise you're better off being you, I think the better you'll go about it. But with the imposter syndrome, I think it's really understanding what it is going on with you that's causing it. And a lot of the times for me, it was like I didn't feel good enough or worthy of what was going on. And so as I've grown through my career and stuff, I've learned to chill out a bit. Like, you actually don't need to know everything. You're actually learning as well, and just relax about it. And I think you'll bring your authentic self to it. So I think that's a better way to approach it, rather than being like, oh my God. Two polarising views on it. I love it because it raises the profile and helps people think a little bit about women's contribution to the workplace, and celebrating kind of women. I don't love it because what I see is a lot of tokenistic gesturing, and what tends to happen is, you know, women are asked to go speak here or there, and for the hour that they're talking, you know, everyone's like, oh, this is great, and then it gets forgotten about. So I know some places move towards saying, oh, it's a month, but really it's about creating equity, and equity should be every day of the year. If you've seen my LinkedIn recently, I've been posting quite a bit about this, about don't worry about the cupcakes, don't worry about the guest speakers. But what I will say is that taking real action, because like I said, it's one thing to grab the women in the organisation, hold a cupcake stand there or take a photo when behind the scenes no one believes that's what's happening and it's a jar to the culture. What I would like to see corporates doing this year is actually taking progress or doing something meaningful about it. And I think that's what everyone wants as well. So what I'm saying to people is, it's funny, we just launched a free version of the equity platform. So I'm saying to everyone, go and use that. You know, what have you got to lose? Nothing. And you might learn something about your organisation and how you can be truly strategic about evolving gender equity, because it's a big topic. And I think organisations need to do deep analysis to understand where they should be concentrating their efforts, because it certainly is not a one-size-fits-all approach. I think they can play a really powerful role. I know over the course of my career, I certainly had male allies that were so influential in my career. And I think that it's not about, even when we talk about women, you know, oh, let's just create a women's group and women mentoring other women. You know, that's kind of one side of the equation. But, you know, I think people should be mentored by who the best mentor for them is, and same with an ally. I love this topic because it's still very much evolving, and globally we've seen a number of different jurisdictions move on legislation. I think it's so powerful because one part of the equation is, say, that national data is what the corporates do, but how do we help people understand how pay decisions are made, and how they can get or understand the best out of that? Because it's often kind of this like approach that HR or leaders might understand this data, but the people never do. And so you're kind of in the dark. And so a lot of research can show that that can be a big contributor to the pay gap. So where we are in a world of transparency, we tend to see lower pay gaps and lower occurrences of pay inequity. What I would say is dream big, because absolutely anything is possible. And so I just wish when I was younger, I really did see that anything was possible for me. And so that's really powerful if you can see that, and that's at any point in life as well. So that's really important. Second is be unapologetically yourself. I think normally, particularly for young women, I know when I was starting out in my career, like I was the one sitting myself out of everything because I just didn't feel I was qualified enough, I was smart enough. You know, I couldn't sit in the room with all these, you know, really skilled and experienced people around the table. I'd feel like, you know, that imposter piece. But it is all possible. So just, I think if you want to do something, you absolutely can do it. It's often a lot of hard work to get to where you want to go, but that's with anything in life. Anything worth earning is going to be hard work. So I think just, you know, follow what you want to do, follow your passion, and you'll get there.